I have a tiny speck of dust in there. I think it's on the upper surface of the ground glass screen or on the lower surface of the plano convex condenser. But either way, it's not on the top surface where I can get to it, so I'm going to have to take this apart to get that speck of dust out. It's a pretty tiny speck of dust, but of course it's very much magnified in the view in the finder. And the plan here is to get this perfect, or if not perfect, as close to perfect as I can reasonably get. I can see it. I think it's on the underside of the condenser. Yeah, it is. Okay, out with this. Out with that condenser. I'm looking at the upper side of the ground glass now, the shiny side of the ground glass, and it's most definitely not on that surface. So it must have been on here, and I can see it. There's a speck of dust right here. Speck of something. Yes, dust. There's also one on the other face. That's blown away. Now there's a mask goes on there between those surfaces. This thing. It's possible that the speck of dust was on that mask and fell off that mask onto the glass. Okay, that's all clean at the moment. Put this frame back in place. Check that that's okay. Drop that back into place. Now when I dropped that back into place, that went very smoothly. That went in without a murmur. That is not normally how it goes. Normally it gives you grief. Get this spring back in place. Get the second one in place. That spring's sitting up, it can't be seated. Yeah, that's better. Okay, there's no dust on those surfaces. That's all good. The prism, that lower surface of the prism, I can see a couple of marks on there. I want to have a go at cleaning those. I'll clean those with glass cleaner on a cotton bud. Yeah, one of them at least was just a speck of dust. It was loose. The other, I'm not so sure what that was. With a big area like this, it's important to get it smear free. Now there is a mark left on there, and I don't think that's going to go away. That's like a like coating almost. It's probably oxidation of the glass or a mark in that surface. Okay, so that's in place. Now I've got to put tape around that. I just want to hold this up to the light, make sure I've trapped in no dust. Looks okay. I'll put this assembly back in this Reflex 3 carcass to hold it while I put the tape in place. I'll put a single screw around the back here out of the way. And now some tape. I have some strips of tape cut and ready to go. And it's simply a case of getting them in place. I'll start with this side, I think. And obviously it's got to be trimmed to lie flat. I want one on the long face here at the front. Now I'm using duct tape here. It's got a cloth base, it doesn't stretch. Because it doesn't stretch, it means that it's not going to be shrinking away at a later date. This piece is more of a nuisance over here. We'll get a piece along there. At this back corner, you got to be, if you're over generous with your tape, you'll find that it interferes with the cocking rack. So you'll end up trimming it away. That's looking pretty good with those three pieces in place. I'll get this clamp bracket down. Now this is only temporary because I've got this on a Reflex 3 body here at the moment which I'm using while I'm assembling this. But you could do this on the camera body itself that you are working on. I just have the advantage that I've got lots of stray spare parts around the place that I can press into service as I need to. That's one of the advantages if you're going to be repairing Retina Reflex cameras, is it's good to have parts bodies about. If you were, for example, say for example you had a Retina Reflex S camera that had, so let's say it had strong sentimental value to you, perhaps it would have been your father's camera or your grandfather's camera, and you were wanting to restore it and make it useful again so you could use it, then it would be well worth your while to source another one on eBay or Craigslist or wherever to practice on before you tackled your real camera, your good camera. I found that always a handy thing. If you've got something that's precious to you, to which may not particularly have a high market value, buy another one. Practice on that. When you've honed your skills, then you can go back and do the proper job on the important one. Okay, so that part looks good. I'll get those small screws in there to hold that bracket in place. And I still want to put tape along that edge at the back. Trouble getting that screw started. It's probably, that bracket's probably not seated all the way over. That's better. The Reflex 3 body I'm using here doesn't have holes where those tiny screws go down inside. It doesn't have clearance underneath. So doing these two little black screws up is a bit problematic. It's not going in. I'm also trying to drive them through the tape, which is another obstruction, of course. Yeah, I can't get that to pick up. I have to do that in the Reflex S body, I think. One disadvantage of this sticky tape is it's really sticky. Try those black screws again. There we go. No problem, you wouldn't know what the fuss was all about. Okay. Well, those excess pieces of tape there, I'll trim those off so they're not hanging around catching on everything and causing me trouble. Like that. Now I want to do these pieces on the base here too, make sure that they're covered. Just cut some small pieces of tape. Well, the video camera just stopped then because it was moaning about lack of battery. Let's get this piece of tape in place. I'm going to make sure none of this is hanging over the edges and causing an obstruction when I go to put that back in place in the camera, because It's there's not much clearance there when you go to slide this thing back in the casting. That's fine, and I think I've got to do the one at that end, and then we're done. Those are just the little holes in that viewfinder housing where the clips drop into place. Okay, that's all looking good. I'm inclined to put that on the Reflex S now and put that last piece of tape in place once it's there. Where's the body? Here's the body. One last check of that surface, it all looks good. Get the viewfinder seated. Two screws hold the finder to the casting. Got quite broad heads on those screws. Okay, and I want to put a piece of tape along the back edge there. I'll cut that. And get that in place. Got that sticking out a bit too far at the back there. I'll trim that back with the scalpel. This tape's just tough. Doesn't cut easily. That's better. Okay, so where are we with this? Let's have a look. Does the advanced lever move smoothly? It does. So we haven't fouled that with the tape. The mask on the back of the finder needs to go in place. Just checking that glass is clean. With all the handling I've done of the prism, there's always a good opportunity to stick a thumbprint somewhere where you don't want one. There's the mask, and it's held in place with two screws, one large nickel plated screw and one which goes all the way through to the casting, and a small black screw which just goes into the viewfinder mount. With that, finder's done. And I'm going to close up the top of the camera. So to close up the top of the camera, what do we need? Well, we need the little meter setting button, and we need the meter setting button return spring. And the meter setting button's return spring is this little coil spring. And the button sits on top of that. I'm just looking at that ASA scale there and making sure it's clean. It looks pretty good. Let's give that a wipe. The button in this case has got a little peg in the middle of it where it sits on that spring. Now they don't always have that peg. Just blow out the finder. Fit this over the top, meter setting button pops up through the middle there, fine. And put the screws in place. Got a special screwdriver for doing that one up, which I will use shortly. One screw in the end of the top housing here. Two screws at this end. Now these are the chrome plated screws. There's still nickel plated screws here from that hold the base plate in place. And the base plate is not, the full base plate's not back on the camera yet. I've only got the short one that I used while I was installing the shutter. So that's got to go on. Get these screws in place. And the rewind knob can go on, so that collar goes on, the rewind knob goes on. Tighten that up. That's the top of the camera. At the base of the camera, this base plate business. Well, I need to take off the advance lever and take off that short base plate and put the proper one back on there. Yeah, in the interest of nothing coming unstuck, I'm going to move this round to frame number 1 so that the film advance locks. I don't think this can back up, but sometimes when you remove the advance lever, it allows the film advance to unwind to the extent that the cocking rack disengages with the gear on the top of the film advance. And if it does that, then that's a nuisance. Obviously with the meter on the top of the camera you can't get at it easily at that end, and it's hard to get it engaged again easily. But by locking the film advance, by moving the frame counter to number 1, that means that the film advance can't unwind. Right, so here's our chrome trim plate for the base of the camera. Looking at this, have I cleaned this? I have, but it's not very clean looking. Maybe I'll give that another quick wipe with some naphtha. I think that was just the heavy, yeah, it's no wonder. It didn't clean up particularly stunningly because of the degree of old adhesive that was on it. It'll look alright with the leatherettes in place. Right, so before you put this on, you must make sure that this spring is present. That's the spring that activates the capping plate. And the capping plate will not latch in position if that spring's not there. So with this camera, we know that the film plane, lens to film plane distance is good because I set it. What we don't know is whether the image focuses correctly at the focus screen stage. It most likely does, but there's always the possibility that the mirror, the capping, the mirror inside here, that the position for that is slightly off, in which case the image could be focused nicely on your focus screen but not focused at the film. So I need to check that. Well, fortunately I've got that lens there for doing that, so I'm pretty confident actually that's okay, but I'll check that to make sure that when the image is, well, we know the image will focus correctly at the film plane because we've set it. I just need to make sure that it also focuses it correctly on the focus screen. Right, well that's good. I'll put that advanced lever on there for the moment. I'll check my image at the focus screen, and assuming that that's okay, yeah, that locked nicely at number 1. Assuming that that's okay, then I can put the leatherettes on the base of the camera. Here is where the adjustment is made. If you have to change the position of the mirror, rest position, to change the apparent focus on the screen, it's done at this point. The lock screw is here and the shaft itself is there. Now they vary slightly in how they're done. That's the lock screw there. That's threaded. Now you can put a screw or something in there and you can use that to push it in or pull it out slightly and then set the position with the lock screw. It's a bit awkward, but actually it's deceptively easy when you go to do it. When you need to do it, it usually doesn't take too long. Let me look out the window, see what this is like. That looks fine to me. That image looks just right at the infinity position, and I'm confident that that lens is a good lens because I know I've set it up previously, so I think we're good to go. Leatherettes next.